our InterSystems booth. We appreciate you guys coming in today. Also, we're on Facebook Live, so you guys can check this out later and see the back of your heads, which is pretty exciting. All right? So, right now, I'd like to bring up Greg Mears. He's going to be talking to us today about integrating the EMS into the healthcare systems. Greg, let's give him a great big hand.
Thank you. So, a 3 o'clock session after lunch, and probably, who's already logged 10,000 steps by noon today? Yeah, easy. So I'll try to entertain you a little bit. What I want to do is spend a little bit of time talking to you about a new product that Zoll is developing in partnership with InterSystems called Zoll Care Exchange. But in order to do that, I've got to go back a little bit in time. And the reason is I'm guessing that many of you, when I say EMS or emergency medical services, that might mean a lot of different things to you. And from a healthcare perspective, I know you guys understand all of the HL7 and the IHE and all of the terminology from that perspective, but let's talk a little bit about defining what EMS is for you, and then I think you'll better understand what we're talking about with this project. So actually, this now is over 10 years old. All of you are familiar with the triple aim from IHE. And the concept of improving a patient's experience either through satisfaction or through their outcomes. The concept of looking at populations and trying to improve their health, all while trying to lower cost or control cost. So this is an important piece, I think, to understand where EMS fits into the rest of healthcare. In fact, I think from the standpoint of InterSystems and certainly Zoll and this new product, we almost have a fourth component to this, and that we don't really want to move forward and do anything unless we also have a satisfied provider. Talk louder. Better? Okay. So anyway, I also want, and I think I have to give IBM credit for this diagram. This was created several years ago as well, but it gives us a perspective of what EMS does in the healthcare market. And there's two slopes here. On the top, your healthcare status as you move from left to right. You start out with a healthy population, a certain percentage, eventually develop active disease or a problem. On the bottom, you can see that there's the upsloping curve, which means that as you progress from left to right, the cost of providing those services goes up. And this is very important for EMS, which is really kind of, from a cost perspective, is in the sweet spot of this diagram, not necessarily the good place to be, but certainly we get more involved in this emergent care. And what we're finding in today's world, when I describe EMS, I'm talking about ambulance services, I'm talking about fire departments that respond, first responders, air medical services, and then that transition. And Zoll as a company specializes in resuscitation and software that focuses in those areas. And so from this perspective, what we need to do as an EMS of the future is we need to better integrate with the rest of healthcare so that we can, one, better understand how to diagnose or how more quickly diagnose and identify problems. But the second piece, and it almost is just as important, is getting that patient to the right place in the right time. And the challenge with that is there's been a lot of consolidation in healthcare. I'll get to that here in a second as well. But with that consolidation, now there are networks. Some of them are in network with a provider or payer, and some are not. And so understanding where that patient is getting their care and then how to get them integrated in the best place within your community's healthcare system or systems becomes important. And this is where health information exchange and interoperability is going to be key, I believe, for EMS and the rest of healthcare in the future. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this kind of a word chart diagram, but it does give you a sense that EMS is involved often initially with a patient with an acute problem, but it also gets involved sometimes just in movement of patients through the healthcare system, maybe from a regional hospital, or from a community hospital to a regional hospital, maybe transporting them back to rehabilitation or some other long-term thing like a dialysis thing on a weekly or a 2 or 3 times a week basis. So we have to integrate to understand where this patient is in the system, the status of their problems. So we've been watching this for, at least 5, 6, 8 years now, and waiting for an opportunity to be able to connect EMS. And I really almost call it the last mile, because EMS actually has had electronic health records much longer than hospitals. There's been a standard that's been around since about 2000. And so it's a fairly mature electronic health record system. But the problem was, to connect a hospital meant you had to connect every EMS agency, about 20,000 of those in the U.S., with every hospital. And when you do the math, we will all be long gone if we had to do this on a one-to-one basis. So we were looking for an opportunity for this to consolidate, for there to be a way to connect without having to do a one-to-one connection. And so what's happened, just like with EMS, but in the healthcare market, I think we've gone from about roughly 400 plus different electronic health record vendors at the hospital level down to where now 8 vendors represent over 90% of the hospitals. And so also a part of the Affordable Care Act and a part of this effort to implement interoperability through meaningful use of these things, there has been a movement to create national, state, and regional exchanges. And so Commonwealth is one national exchange, and those are supposed to be check marks. I guess the transition between the Mac and Windows environment created boxes. And then Care Quality. But between these two national exchanges, these 8 vendors that represent over 90% of the hospitals all participate. So this, as much as anything, became that opportunity to where we could potentially argue with math and win. And so from this, we started a dialogue with InterSystems and an opportunity to not only connect EMS with the rest of healthcare, that last mile, but at the same time it allowed us to look at all system. And for us, we've got a hospital and an EMS ecosystem, and really the whole purpose of this is that we make devices and we make software, but there is a exchange that has to happen at the patient's side with a lot of different devices and things that providers interact with, and then there's an exchange that connects with the rest of healthcare. And so we wanted a solution that could do all of those things. A better diagram would be if you look at this from the perspective of Zoll. In this top left is all of our devices. We have, again, mainly resuscitation developed devices, automated defibrillators, monitors, temperature management, ventilators, all of these type of resuscitation and acute care devices. We understand, and every one of those has a data component, and it's got to somehow connect with that electronic health record. On the right side are all of our software solutions that not only involve electronic health records, but also 911 centers, dispatch, even the billing and the business side of EMS, that has data that has to connect. And then we're seeing more and more of these Internet of Things devices, whether it's monitors or scales or temperature probes, these kinds of things that have to interface with this ecosystem. And then finally, there has to be a pipe from all of this through some type of health information exchange to be able to connect that in a bidirectional way. So through InterSystems, we think we have now validated, and we do have a solution that we're ready to introduce to the market. To do that, though, we had to come up with really what are our use cases? What is it that we really expect to do with this? And the first one is whether we're in a dispatch center with EMS, 911, or whether we're at a patient's side, we think that we should be able to query, pull up a patient's information and use that at that interaction and time of care, whether that's in the dispatch center on the phone or whether it's at the patient's side. And so that information becomes key to help us understand what the problem is, and then again identify what part of the healthcare network they need to be either transported or inserted into. The second is we've got all of these devices, we have all of this software. Any information that we collect or create has to follow that patient as we transport them into the healthcare system or refer them if it's not an emergent issue. And then on the third side of things, and the last piece of this use case, is after this is all said and done, there's a need to understand whether we treated the patient appropriately, whether we provided the correct. So from an outcome as well as a business model perspective, we needed to have information to do that. So through InterSystems and the Zoll Care Exchange using HealthShare, we've been able to successfully develop and test and positively exchange information through all three of these use cases. So for us to now take these use cases and create a product, it really came down to three components. You know, we identified a health information exchange engine through InterSystems and HealthShare. The next piece was, could we connect with these national exchanges, and also understanding that there would be some scenarios where we needed to connect at a regional or a state or even a local hospital. But in general, we were trying to use a exchange model where there were already members, and through an agreement we could participate and exchange information. And so we talked about care quality and Commonwealth as a method to do that. And then the last piece of this is we had to build in the connectivity with our existing products so that it could communicate through the APIs and through the health share engine. So for phase one of this, we focused on implementing this with our EPCR. In the EMS world, EPCR is an electronic health record. It stands for Patient Care Report. And then we have a monitor defibrillator called the X Series, which does 12 lead ECGs, and that information also has to have a conduit or a pathway into the health system. So together, this represents, it's really approaching 2,000 customers. From a volume, we have over 1 million events that we do 12 leads on each year. From an EMS perspective, there's about 45 million EMS responses each year in the United States. Zoll represents about 13 million or so of those. So this was a good start for us to develop a product that could be useful in the EMS and to healthcare systems and hospitals. So again, our solution for the HIE engine was InterSystems and HealthShare. We've also partnered with J2 Interactive, who is providing really the management of this system initially to help us get it configured, installed, and up and running, including the connectivity with the national exchanges as well as a select set of regional exchanges that are really, to a great degree, customer directed, where they either are required or need to have that connectivity. So, what I want to do is shift at this point, and I've given you the introduction, but around the corner here at kiosk number 4, I believe, we would like to demo this for you. So I will shut down. You've heard enough out of me, and I will turn it over to Danielle and Ryan to give you a demonstration. So thank you.
All right, great. Do we have any questions for Greg? Anything that comes to mind that you'd like to ask Greg while he's here? Oh, yes, certainly.
Question: are you looking at joining Commonwealth and Care Quality as well, or were you discussing that?
Yes, so we are a member of Care Quality and have been for some time. We are working on a membership with Commonwealth. We're going through the certification processes with both.
Any other questions? All right, then one more time for Greg. If I didn't scan you, raise your hand. If I didn't scan you, raise your hand. I don't think it. Yeah, we'll find out. So they won't do it again. So.